Welcome back. Earlier, we were joined by Taryn Liebel as we discussed the importance of forgiveness. Now, we all know that this is often a long and hard process. But then how do we move towards a state of forgiveness and reconciliation? Well, Taryn Lee is back to share her insights. So, Taryn, welcome back. Moving on to the conversation of now that we are here and you have been done wrong. What if you just can't forgive the next person, your perpetrator?
I think the state of unforgiveness has far-reaching implications. Mind, body, soul. Having to feel like you're forever in a box or a cage. Because ultimately we want to live prosperous lives. But how can I live a prosperous life where I'm encaged, where I'm enslaved? Or I can use the word bondage. Do I want to grow? And those are the type of questions I need to ask myself. Because often you see the perpetrator has moved on and you're stuck with all of this resentment.
Yeah. You know, this analogy and the conversation just leads me to a quote that Tata Madiba once delivered. And look, it's not word for word, but he basically said, holding on and harboring that pain and that hurt is like drinking poison and expecting your perpetrator to die. Instead, it slowly kills yourself. You know, a lot of the times where me and my family have some altercation or maybe a taxi driver who cuts you off at the robot, we always say, don't let them take your key. It's your key to your happiness, your key to your forgiveness, your key to your happiness. That person has already moved on with their lives and you still harbor those feelings. But then we introduce the conversation and the idea of empathy. Where does empathy have a part to play in this entire thing?
So I also want to add and say, when you choose to forgive, it's about doing it for you. You're not absolving that person from what they've done, nor the consequences of their actions. But I'm saying, I want to be set free. And part of that is empathy. How do I have empathy for this person? Again, not excusing their behavior, but understanding their perspective. Often, you look at the psychological issues behind your perpetrator, depending who they are. In the social development space, a lot of it is abusers, rapists. How do you look at that and say, why were they so mean to me? What had happened to them? Again, not excusing what they've done. And then empathy for myself. If I was the person who wronged someone else, if I was the person who brought shame upon myself, how do I have enough empathy for myself to say, where was I at that space of my life?
When it comes to then having those practical techniques, practical things that we can do on a daily basis to practice forgiveness or be a recipient of someone forgiving you for the wrong you've done.
And so coupled with empathy, I would think compassion too.
Okay.
Compassion for them and compassion for ourselves. Compassion for yourself when you were once a bully.
Yeah.
And so some of the practical things that we can do, especially when you're struggling with forgiveness, is get support. How do I have someone walk with me this road and hold space for me? Specifically on the days when I don't want to forgive. Because often forgiveness is like a scar. That scar is okay until it storms or it's cold. And when you realize, actually, I have a scar. It's aching today. So when you have those triggers, how do I process those triggers and understand it's not going to be permanently. I just have to work through them. And then I think issues of spirituality and faith-based, the universal idea of forgiveness. What are some of those practical steps? I think mindfulness, prayer, meditation, and then our faith, that we are commanded to forgive even though we want to, and understanding issues of grace and mercy. It's a biblical theme throughout.
Absolutely.
I think in Matthew, Peter asked Jesus, how many times must I forgive someone who has wronged me over and over again?
For as many times as they've hurt you over and over
77
again.
times, and that is boundless.
Absolutely. So when we then look at the idea, especially looking inward, it's South Africa and what we have been through in the past 30 years. There's forgiveness and there's reconciliation. Does forgiveness automatically mean reconciliation?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I would hope so.
And I want to take that back to my own personal experience. I'm divorced, single parent. I've forgiven, but I don't want that person back in my space. And so how do I forgive, but set boundaries? Not just for that person, for the next person, because often we attract that same type of behavior. So that vulnerability and loving someone from a distance because you can, especially if they're family.
Yeah.
I love you, but your behavior is toxic for me. And so I can forgive you, but you won't enter in this space, this inner space of mine.
Absolutely. Community developer you are, as I feel like you've helped our Afternoon Express family and our community to develop into more forgiving people. Thank you so much, Taryn.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation. And while forgiveness is not always easy, it's an important step in our own journey towards healing and freedom.